This episode is sponsored by StationWise, the first staffing software to be truly firefighter-proof. Now, you may be wondering why I have software as a sponsor when I focus usually on physical and mental health of the first responders, and I will tell you exactly why. For the first time, this is a staffing platform that also is able to integrate wellness information through call load tracking, exposures, and wearables integration. Now, of course, StationWise focuses on staffing and allows you to manage staffing, choose vacation picks, put in rules for leave and trades, and even deploying strike teams. But through the latest programming and AI automation, they have streamlined this process to free up battalion chiefs so they can focus on what they're supposed to be doing on the operational side and the fireground. Now, StationWise is also able to monitor not only how many calls we've responded to in the shift, but the duration of the call, therefore the rest and recovery in between, thus monitoring the sleep deprivation that degrades our health and performance. It's accessible not only through the computer, but also on Apple and Android devices, meaning that you can access it not only within the station itself, but outside as well. Now, one of the most powerful features of StationWise, in my opinion, is the ability to run reports. Therefore, for example, be able to see just how much money is being used on overtime that could actually be front-loaded for proactive staffing, as well as setting alarms knowing when you are hitting overtime parameters. And another important feature is the integration of other programs and software for payroll, training, reports, etc. Now, StationWise is trusted by numerous agencies in California, Texas, and Idaho. And if you want to hear the full story from the founder, who he himself is a son of a firefighter, listen to episode 1163 with Marcus Edwards. And if you want to book a demo or learn more, go to stationwise.com. This episode is sponsored by Transcend, a veteran-owned and operated performance optimization company that I introduced recently as a sponsor on this show. Well, since then, I have actually been using my products and I've had incredible success. There was initial blood work that was extremely detailed, and based on that, they offered supplementation. So I began taking DHEA, BPC 157 for inflammation, based on the fact that I've been a stuntman, a martial artist, and a firefighter my whole life, lots of aches and pains. Dihexa to help cognition after multiple punches to the head and shift work, and peptides. 4 months later, they did a detailed blood work again, and I was actually able to taper off 2 of the peptides because my body had responded so well to just one of them that it was optimized at that point. So I cannot speak highly enough of the immense range of supplementation that they offer, whether it's male health, female health, peptides to boost your own testosterone, which I would argue is needed by a lot of the fire service, or whether it's exogenous testosterone needed, especially after TBIs or advanced age. Now, as I mentioned before, the other side of this company is an altruistic arm called the Transcend Foundation, which is putting veterans and first responders through some of their protocols free of charge. Now, Transcend are also offering you, the audience, 10% off their protocols. And you can find that on jamesgearing.com under the Products tab. And if you want to hear more about Transcend and their story, listen to episode 808 with the founder, Ernie Colling. Or go to transcendcompany.com. Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name's James Gearing, and this week I have an incredibly important episode for you. Doug Orchard is a documentary filmmaker and was my guest on episode 576, where we talked about The Motivation Factor, the film he made on an incredibly progressive PE program in California in the 1960s. For many of you listening, you are probably recipients or hoping one day to be a recipient of some sort of pension. Well, in Doug's latest film, he exposes how private equity firms are draining money from so many pensions in this country. So for anyone who will be relying on a pension at the end of their career, this is an absolute must listen. Now, before we get to this incredibly important and powerful conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of almost 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I welcome back onto the show Doug Orchard. Enjoy. Doug, I want to start by saying welcome back to the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Thank you. It's so great. Thanks for having me back.
So we sat down, ironically, I was looking it up right before we hit record, episode 576. So that was 3 years and change ago. So we were just emerging, I think, from the pandemic then. One of the things I want to hit as a kind of icebreaker before we go to the bulk of this conversation today, I am constantly referring to your film, The Motivation Factor, when we look at the importance of addressing the nation's health. And bolstering PE programs and serving real food in our schools would be a massive, massive, tool for kind of curbing this upward trajectory of obesity and overweight Americans at the moment. So, before we dive into pensions and all things, talk to me about kind of any different perspectives that you've got, having studied that, having made an incredible film about that, as we've emerged now 3 years post-pandemic.
Well, I understood when I was making that film that the people at the top didn't understand the topic, really. I just had a lot more faith that they would be open to learning about it and responding when they saw, hey, here's how things have been in the last 20 successful civilizations, the leaders. Here's what they did. Here's how they unified the people. Here's how they achieved optimal gain. Here's how we became better than everybody else. In the end, our brains don't get a pass. Our body, you could just look at your stomach and say, okay, that's the status of my brain. So it's all connected, right? And the cost of our healthcare, it's crippling everything. I just didn't understand how dark it's become that they kind of like it that way. They kind of like it this way. There's a lot of money in having a sick society. And I was really, really dark, but you have to understand and this gets into what we're about ready to talk about, not in an impossible, it's a gloom doom, but what we have to do in a way that's actually in your self-interest to preserve it. But I've been a little bit discouraged. That movie, the trailer and the pieces from that film, wow, they've got over 1 billion views now. But no one makes reference to the film. Like the film, no one even knows the film's still out there. It's still on my to-do list to figure out how to get the population to watch The Motivation Factor, which is and will always be the best movie I've ever made.
What's sad is I've had so many strength and conditioning coaches on the show, and I don't think a single one of them has heard of the film.
No, but if you show them any of that footage, they go, oh yeah, I've seen that. Well, I mean, since we've talked David Gagan, whatever, Navy SEAL guy, he's ripped right from the movie with the graphics and everything from the movie. He's put it up on his Instagram account. Robert Kennedy Jr. used it for his Make America Healthy Again campaign, the official one, and all of that. So yeah, it's everywhere. And I'm happy that people see it. People don't understand how much work it is to digitize that stuff, to find it, to drag it out. We were all over the country grabbing that and putting that together. Although I was in Sacramento, California area, a lot of that footage came from South Carolina. So we had to go to some boondock place with big dogs, get that and all of that. So Ron Jones went and got that. He deserves the credit for that. A ton of alumni gave me this footage, and then you got to pay to digitize it and restore it and all that. So, it's a little bit frustrating when someone lifts something and just sticks it out there and with the aim to sell something, get more likes or whatever it is that they're trying to do with it. So it hasn't improved. We've only gone the wrong direction since then, and continue to do so. And I think since we talked, I don't remember if this was in your podcast or not, but there was a school that was still doing it, that was trained from that, and they're in Modesto. And since then, due to the actions of the supervisor, they've stopped. Like, they don't do it either.
Which is crazy.
Been doing it since 1969, 68. So they've been doing it for 57 years, I believe, and it just stopped. So that coach left, and now in Texas and trying to get Texas to do it. So we'll see.
So for people listening that don't know what we're talking about, it's the incredible PE program that was taken from the Russians.
The Russians came and took it. We took it from Greek and Rome. It went from Europe to us, over to Russia. After the fall of Iron Curtain, we saw that they were still doing it, that they did it the whole time. Yeah, it wasn't just to get jacked. It was to actually restore your body to that natural state. We see little bits of that here and there.
Yeah. But I think the point is with the footage that was put out there, had that all been attached to check out this documentary, see what this program was in the 60s, let's start making it a thing in the country, you'd be like, okay, all right, you took parts of my film, but you're using it for the movement, and that would have been different.
Oh, I could care less. Yeah. If they just make reference to the movie and people watched enough of it, really, I make movies to actually change things. I'm not satisfied anymore with entertainment alone. I see a major issue that's not being addressed and won't be fixed by our parties. And I make nonpartisan movies that actually have the potential to move the needle for society and fix things and usually there's a historical with a current, there's a number of factors. It's always very comprehensive to look at it. I say I could probably get a PhD in it because they typically will take me about 4 years to do. So anyway.
Yeah, but I think, just staying on this for a second, it is important because when we talk about what needs to happen, the motivation factor, what was done in those high schools in California in the 60s is absolutely part of the solution. Then you take in what Jamie Oliver was doing with school food, that's another part of the solution. Then you look at bolstering local farmers to be able to create organic food, within that town, within that city. Now you're starting to amass things, pedestrianizing downtown, utilizing more public transport so people are walking more. These are all actionable solutions. And as you mentioned, our JFK was the champion at the time of this. Now we've got RFK, who I'm sure at his heart was wanting to actually make the nation healthier. But the moment, obviously that he stepped into this other party, he was castrated, and that was it, because we've heard nothing about making the nation healthier. So I just want to kind of highlight this because I think the motivation factor is absolutely one of the actionable tools that anyone listening now, especially if you're part of a school system, can look at, see the success, not just of the health of the kids, but the bullying and the grades and all these other areas that were improved as well, and start asking the question, well, why are we not doing it this way?
Right. Well, I don't think we're going to fix it until we do. It or something pretty dang similar. It's always historically been like that. At least the activities they did, how you got people to do it together, the unity that is derived from it, the mental health that comes as a consequence of it. That school I made reference to that stopped it since we talked last had no bowling, 8th grade. I interviewed somebody who had been living in her car, and she experienced bullying, living in her car with her mom in elementary school, but didn't in that junior high school as a consequence of the program. It was all for one for all. They're united, and these are things you can't teach in the algebra class, but you can out in the field together. So it was really great. And I know all of us learned some lessons, who can do team sports, for example. But this is something that caught the whole society, everybody. Everyone's part of it.
Absolutely. Well, transitioning then to another topic that affects almost everybody. You reached out 2-3 weeks ago now with a whole different kind of area that you've dived into, and it certainly directly affects a lot of the people listening that are wearing a uniform and receiving a city or a county pension. A world that I'm completely or state
and federal. If you got actual, if you got military here too.
We have.
Yeah. So I reached out to you because, and I'll just share with the audience, here was a conversation. I said, James, I know why you're pissed off, and I know why it's not working. I know why the unions aren't listening to you, why you can't get changes, even though the data proves it. I know now why it's happening. And so I shared with you what I've learned from this movie I've been working on. And so I'm going to try to get through it pretty dang quickly, even though the film's going to take about an hour and a half.
Take your time, though. There's no rush on this end.
Yeah. So I found it accidentally. And I just want everyone to understand that the biggest pile of money, the biggest pots of money we have in every state is that state's public pension. The biggest pot of money that we got at any county is the county's public pension. The biggest pile of money that we got in any city is the city's public pensions. Okay, so you've seen this trend, right? So there's $6.5 trillion right now sitting in the combined state, county, and city public pensions of America right now. Should be a lot more, but that's what it is. And for the past 30 years, there's been a pilfering of it. There's been changes made in how those things have been administered. And those changes have done two things. One, there's been a stealing of the public pension, and it's the result of it's the cost of secrecy. And so the film title that I'm working on is Pension Promises Stolen, the Cost of Secrecy. And we'll see what it ends up being. But what's happened, if you're a firefighter and you're in the city of Detroit and you were part of things back in, let's say, 2005, and let's say you retired in around 2010, you experienced something. And I want to walk through this first before I back into how this has all happened and why everyone should pay attention. And then ultimately how all of this is the answer to why your unions aren't listening to you anymore. And what you need to do to flip that. You're never going to get the hours that you need to be at and everything else until this changes. Okay. All right. We'll see if that's everyone's out there at the end of this, so they believe me. This is what's happened. So in Detroit in 2010 went bankrupt as a city. Their pension was actually in great shape overall, comparative to where most pension funds are at today now. But the city was pretty messed up. And so the city went bankrupt. And what they did is they took the city employees and they said, okay, we are going to give everybody a 4.5% haircut from what you were supposed to get. But that's not that bad of a haircut. We went bankrupt. And, but we're all going to give you we're not going to give you any cost of living increase, what's called a COLA, a cost of living adjustment. So you're not going to get a COLA. So for those who are not part of this world for a moment, let me explain what that meant for them. It meant that you're going to start at some percent. Let's work with $100 because that I can do the math. You're going to start with $100 a month paycheck. Okay. Here's your $100. But, you know, you get $100 the first, what we're going to call it, month, right? And the next year, though, things went up. Inflation, you have like typically a 3% rise in inflation. And so there's no cost of living adjustment for that. So now you have, in reality, $97 to spend that month, right? Because it's changed down. A lot of people will just think of it differently, but I'd like to think of it as it's the haircut from you. They're taking that money from you. You only have this much now. So fast forward a decade, you've lost $30 of the $100. You're down to $70. But then you ran into COVID. In the last 5 years, there's an economist, Kotlikoff, in my film, who explains that we've seen a roughly everything's gone up 30%. Food, the cost of everything, a 30% increase. So we'll just take that 30% away, because that's how it would work in this example. So instead of $70 5 years later to present, you're now at what, $40,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're at $40. Now you started getting paid $100 a month, but now you're only getting paid $40 a month. Well, how's that going to work, right? And 1 decade more, 3% every year, right? 3%. It's another 30%. So in the year 2030, the people that retired in 2010, right, from Detroit without COLAs, by 2035, they're living on $10 a month when they started at $100 a month. That's their actual purchasing power of whatever it is. It might be, it might still be $100 a month, but they're getting, that's what they'd be getting. But it can only buy $10 worth of stuff a month, right? Because of what's happened. The reason I want to share that is throughout the country, we are seeing the complete elimination of COLAs. Now, a lot of you who are like, some of you may actually know firefighters or police officers who experienced this in Detroit. You say, hey, not so, Doug. They didn't get that 4.5% cut, and they started right where they're supposed to be, and they got a COLA. It's just 1% a year. Okay, so let's take all that math. It's like, I'm not going to do it, but it's not great, right? 1% is not 3% over all that time. Then that 30%, it only went 1% a year. So that's right there. You ended up with 25. You lost 25, right? So you could see it's not much better at all. But those firefighters and those police officers in Detroit, they're part of a system that were not getting Social Security. So the city did not put a dime into the Social Security. They were not going to receive Social Security. So as a result, they said, oh, we got to make it better for them because they don't even have Social Security. So maybe they're at what, $18, in 10 years from now, maybe they're getting 18 or 20 bucks out of that original 100, and that's it, and not Social Security. So I have teachers, for example, in the state of Ohio, who 28 years later, they're getting 30 cents on the dollar right now. That's where they're at right now. We found, the group that was part of, they found a teacher that was actually living in a chicken coop. They went to this address, and the person says, she's not here, she's in the back. She literally was living in a chicken coop. And as crazy as that sounds, when you see what that was actually buying and her other options, that was all she could have. And so she's being really thrashed. Okay, so how did all of this happen? Like, how are we in a situation where these public pensions that were designed and were sold to be so good that you won't even need Social Security? How did this get to the point that a city could go bankrupt and screw you like that? And by the way, the city of Chicago in 2000, they had this asset value in their total pension fund, which today is the same dollar amount. It may have like 200 or 300,000 million more. It's like nothing out of all these billions. It's the same value, but their liabilities have gone up $60 billion. They got the same money, but they got liabilities now, 60 billion more. I mean, it's impossible. They say they're like 22% funded, but someone in my film did the analysis, said no, they're 11%. They're 11% funded. They're done. And you can't sue them. You are not allowed to sue them. You can't sue them until they don't make their payment. So as long as they're just paying out anything, and all those politicians who are part of it, they're retiring, they're done, and they're just, they're out of there, right? It's not until someone catches at the very, very end of the show that it's just done. It's a crappy system. I mean, it's really too bad. And so how did this happen? And what does this have to do with your unions? And this is where it gets interesting. So the reason I started making this film is there's an investigation going on right now at CalPERS, which is the largest public pension we have in America right now. It's $550 billion. And then CalSTRS has almost the same amount. So together, they're about $1 trillion. To put that in perspective, everyone gets pretty amazed with Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, that they've got. It's not even that amount. It's a little less than what just California has in their 2 state public pensions. And so there's 2 board members that went whistleblower, and so they reached out to this investigator. His name is Edward Siddell. He wrote 2 books that happen to be right here. One is called Who Stole My Pension? He actually wrote this book with Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Man, Poor Man. This is actually the only bestseller on pensions ever written, because who would ever read a book about pensions? And then the other one the guy wrote was How to Steal a Lot of Money Legally. He got so frustrated that nobody was listening that he just outlined exactly what these public pensions are doing, how they get into everybody's, what the private equity is doing to the public pensions, and how they're stealing this money legally, and lays it all out. Kind of interesting stuff. So anyway, so these 2 former board members at CalPERS have hired Edward Siddell, to do a forensic audit. Now, he has pioneered this space. He won the largest whistleblower at the time award from the SEC on something on JP Morgan Chase. He got $88 million for that. He's got another whistleblower award that he's done, investigation, where he got they earned $20 million, and another one for $11 million. This guy is an animal. He's here in Florida. And he was in a film that I did called The Baby Boomer Dilemma, which at one point was looking at pensions for a little bit of that. So they've hired him, and as you could only imagine, this guy is not popular at all with all these state public pensions. And they immediately, when he's coming on, the other states are sending all this data to them. Here's you have to do all this stuff. And then he goes in, waits a couple of weeks, and then he does a Freedom of Information Act and say, I want all the documents that are related to my name. So he's got all these, and you can see all this traffic that's going from other states that he's done these forensic audits on, and how they're immediately trying to queue in. And then there's specific organizations that are these consultants to these funds. And it's so dirty. It's crazy what's happening. But the first thing I want everyone to understand is these are the biggest piles of money that we've got in the United States. They're individually sit in every state. And they were doing just so great in the early 90s, mid 90s. So good that a lot of state treasurers, governors, attorney generals, everybody started looking at these and going, that's a lot of money sitting there. Some of these are overfunded. They got like too much money in there. And they're trying to figure out, well, maybe we could access some of these funds, right? So there was some pilfering starting to happen there, but private equity really was just getting going. Some of if you're a man and you're married, you probably have a wife who in 1990, if you're that old, watched a movie with called Pretty Woman. My wife recently tried to get me to watch that movie, which I've somehow been able to avoid my whole life. I made it through 1 hour and I said, I'm sorry, I love you, but I have to bail. So I have no idea how the movie ends, but I do know this. It came out in 1990, and it's a film about a guy who runs private equity. And he goes in and buys companies. He breaks them all apart, sells off the parts. There's more money there. And then he goes off, leverage buyout. So this is Blackstone that they're basically remodeling off of, right? And this is what they're in. This is the business. Well, what happened in the 90s, private equity wanted access to that pension fund money. And they want to have more and more. And so what they started doing about 30 years ago, between 20 to 30 years ago, they started to go around to every city and every county and every state and said, even though public pensions are public and all the money in there and all the documents are open to public scrutiny, our contracts are trade secrets. And so they can't be shared. And so we have funds that make so much money, it'll be great for you guys to participate, but you have to sign an NDA that you will not share or disclose anything about this. So much so is that the public doesn't even know what the investments of those funds are being used for, or who else is part of that fund. They don't know anything. And so 30 years ago, you could learn anything. 20 years ago, you could learn some things. And 10 years ago, you could see nothing. Nobody can. Even with the Freedom of Information Act going in and requesting it, you can't. And this part, no one believes me, but you'll see in the trailer as I show like one person after another who are board members on these pension funds. None of them are allowed to see the contracts that are signed by the staff to the private equity firms. Now, the fiduciaries, the board members, they're the boss. They can hire, fire staff. They choose what they're going to be investing in, what percentage. They have to sign off on every single thing, everything. But they're not allowed to see anything as it relates to those contracts. Nothing. And what's in those contracts? Well, you have to see the movie, but it's crazy stuff. The fees that they're having to pay are insane. It's just a giant pilfering. And so 30 years ago, if you were to take all these funds, you just take off 1% to 2% of that money a year and you let it compound, it equals the original value of the fund. So if I start with $100 right now, James, you give me $100 and I'm going to manage your $100, and I take 1% or 2% of that. Okay, of your $100 as a management fee, and I let it compound every year. I'm taking it from you. At 30 years from now, that $100 is now in my pocket. I have $100 in my pocket that came from that 1% to 2% of your fees. Okay, that's just how this works. You, on the other hand, your money would have grown, but that $100 isn't there anymore, right? It's with me. So it's a double of the principle. We are in a situation that there's every single public pension had plenty of money in America to meet every promise ever made, but it's all been stolen by excessive fees going to private equity, and no fiduciary was allowed to see it. So that's what's going on. Now you're going to say, well, wait a second. How could this happen? You're taking the biggest piles of money that we got in America right now, the biggest piles of money, that the state treasurer in South Carolina, who was the single board member, was not allowed to see the contracts. He would have to just wire money. He couldn't even see what it's going to. And yeah, I have him in my film. He does exactly that. And it's like that in every single state. They have no idea. No idea. There's zero fiduciary. So how does this happen? Well, to understand how it happens, we have to get out of what we're even talking about, and we need to go over to something else private equity was very involved in. These guys are smart. Hats off to them. They put the work out. They went to every city, every state, and said, hey, if you want to be part of this, then you all have to agree, and no one has broken it. There's not one city, one county. There's 500 separate pension funds in Florida alone. Not one of them's ever broke. Think about that. I mean, it's amazing. That's amazing, right? I mean, think about how everybody leaks something somewhere. No leaks, none. That's really impressive. Like, yeah, hey, America, we could do stuff, you know? You have to get paid a lot. Okay, so let's get over to what happened. And this gets back to a Supreme Court thing that happened in 2010. Prior to that, we had this thing called Citizens United. And what happened is we had these political action committees, and they were actually known as super PACs. They became super PACs because private equity and major corporations were putting money into these blind, dark super PACs. And then they could put it wherever they want. You and I, if we donate money to a political campaign, that's disclosed. That's public record. People could see this. But you could, as a corporation, put money into a super PAC, and there's a total veil of secrecy. And so, you know, that's impossible to be upheld. Supreme Court upheld it. So now, like, what are you going to do about it? So then it went crazy after that, okay? The amount of monies that went into these super PACs was huge. And it got to the point, and by the way, everyone should know that I'm not politically aligned with a party. I can't for the films I do. I do non-partisan films, right?
And we're the same there anyway.
What's that?
I said we're the same, standing in the middle.
We kind of have to do what we do, right? And it's nice. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're in Ohio, which is a Republican state, or Minnesota, which is a Democrat state, or Pennsylvania, which is a purple state, right? It doesn't matter. It all works the exact same way. Every governor, state treasurer, attorney general, all of them have a super PAC. They have a super PAC. They have a political action committee. They have one. And that's where people put money, not just you and me, but that's where the corporations are putting them out. That's where the private equity is putting their money. So what's really happening is you're Blackstone, you're BlackRock. Yeah, they're two separate people you may not know, but they're both like these equally huge funds that have a massive power. And in fact, the Wall Street Journal today said if you take BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, the money they manage, that's 30% of all stocks in the United States. They own 30%. That's crazy, right? So anyway, so it's about a lot of money. So they're taking money from a public pension that the staff's signing off on. And by the way, the staff's pay have roughly doubled over the last 3 to 4 years. I'll let you think about that one. So they sign off on these things that the fiduciaries can't even see at all what it's for. They can't see. Oh, hey, this. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you what the things I've already discovered what these are going to, but so they take some of those excessive fees and they'll drop it in as an insurance policy, right, into these super PACs for the governor, for the attorney general, and then the governor, attorney general are standing guard. And so let's say you're Ohio, and let's say that you are a group who have a pension like STRS, the teachers in Ohio. They're being completely screwed. So they've gone, like a decade and a half without getting a COLA, and they don't get Social Security. And so they're electing people on the board to be people that kind of come in and fix this, and really they want transparency. They want to get the state to put more money in to fill in this hole and stuff like that. So what does the governor do? He goes in and pulls back his representatives that he placed there who were doing this kind of stuff. Oh my gosh, that's one of my appointees doing this. Hey, you're out, right? And the guy's like, you can't take me out. You can only put me in. Remember Trump said, I put in Powell as the FDA chair. You're out of there. You can't take me out unless if it's wrongdoing. You can't take me out. And this guy did the same thing. So what happens? There's a lawsuit. In the meantime, he's off. So that whole year, the governor gets exactly what he wants. There's not a majority. And then the next year, he's back on. And there's this other guy in there now. And now they're getting a majority. Now they want to not pay the staff their bonuses, which is double their pay, by the way. Yeah, you're making $500,000, and you meet your bonus, you get 500,000. And what's your bonus off of? Is it off of anything of what the stock market's doing? Is there certain no? The bar set to it has to match your performance. That's like, I mean, man, I don't even know how to. Could you imagine that, James? A firefighter is like, okay, what's the standard? Your performance. So first day, you go out, you do a run. That's your performance. So a year from now, with excessive training, you got to do what you did the first day. So run slow, right? I mean, I'm not joking. That is how it is right now across our country.
Crazy.
That's really happening. So they always get double their pay. So these guys were getting double their pay, but they had lost $5 billion of $100 billion. They lost $5 billion. They lost 5% that year. And the board said, I don't know. Don't call me just, I don't know, strange or what. I'm thinking you shouldn't get a bonus when you lose $5 billion. Like, none of the teachers are getting a COLA this year. We have less money in the fund than we did last year because you lost $5 billion. So no bonus for you. What happened? The attorney general shows up, calls a special meeting, gets the board back, and says, if you don't give these guys their bonus, I'm suing all of you for breach of your fiduciary duty. And it wasn't an empty threat because he was suing two other people. It cost $250,000 to defend against that. For a job, you get paid nothing as a fiduciary. And the state, and you can get representation, but it's unless you want to pay for it, you can get free representation, but it's whatever counsel that attorney general who is suing you assigns to your case.
Oh my goodness.
All right, so if this is starting to feel like, that's just, okay, that's a Republican. I can go in and show you every state what's going on. It's all the same. All right. Just trust me on this one thing. So now let's get to the unions. The unions also, not all of them, some of them are really great, really great. There's a union I filmed in Rhode Island. They absolutely represent their workers. They are just rock solid awesome. Those guys hired Ted Siddell, actually hired for an investigation. They've been making all kinds of great changes happening there. The treasurer and the staff had disclosed that they were paying $8 million in fees to private equity. As a result of the investigation, today they disclose, okay, we pay $188 million in fees. Minnesota, he did an investigation there. He did an investigation. They, this isn't true or whatever else. And then they just kind of quietly notated on the next report an increase of 400% in the fees that they've been paying.
Oh my God.
So it's like that. Okay. It's like that. And that's not even really coming up for the whole thing. It's way worse. So these unions, some of the unions got greedy. And I want to compare, it's a bad comparison. I want to compare it to our streaming services, whether it's like Amazon Prime or whether it's like, all Hulu and all these ones, right? There's a lot of things that we were ad free. I paid money, like $14-15 a month, and I'm ad free. And then magic wand, all of them, right? Almost like the first 2 months, same 2 months, decided we're going to throw ads back in. But you can be ad free if you pay an additional whatever. Your unions who decided to just take you for granted, just like Amazon's decided and Netflix, which I don't even subscribe to because it's just a bunch of copy lame. I don't even like movies. I don't even know why I make it. I like to make them exposés, but I don't like to watch them. I know, I'm really weird. I don't. My wife's like, what are you going to watch in I want to read a book. So Amazon, and once they get fat and happy and get rid of a lot of their competitors, they just take their clients for granted, and they just want more money. And now they're going to bore us with advertisements too, right? And so unions are doing this. Unfortunately, too many unions have super PACs. All right, they've got them too, just like the governor's got them, just like the attorney general has them. I want you to think about this just for a minute. Imagine You decide to run for governor, and the governor you're running against, whatever your political party is, it's the other party, right? You're this party, it's the other one. And the other one has a super PAC where they could put unlimited amount of money in this thing, dark money, nothing's disclosed, unlimited, right? And you're going out there earning $25 a person, knocking on doors, whatever you have to do to collect it. What chances do you honestly have to win? And that's the situation. You got to understand that this situation's coming 100% from monies that are in your retirement account right now. All the money that's screwing everything up, and we ain't even talking about what they're using the money for. That's a whole nother conversation, but I do show some gross examples. But all that money that's coming in is coming in from our public pensions without the fiduciaries being able to sign off or see. No one's going to say anything, and they control the whole thing. Now, if you're feeling uncomfortable when you actually think about this, you might say, well, wait a second. That doesn't even sound like, it kind of sounds almost hopeless, right? You got to understand, you hold the power to turn this whole thing around. The very thing you need to do so that your hours go back to, so you don't get cancer and repressed unreasonably in your job, right? The very thing to do that is what you need to do to save your pension, because you will not have the retirement you think you have. Absolutely, you won't. You won't. Well, we'll talk. Put a pin in that. I'll tell you in a minute. But you either have to replace your union with another one, or you have to get back control of your union and demand it. And you have to have that threat. Like, it has to be that unified. And the way to do it isn't for your hours. The way to do it is for your money. Because if private equity is told, if the public pensions have to be transparent like they were 30 years ago, where all documents are there, there's not a private equity firm, as far as most of those, that would ever allow their contracts to be held up to public scrutiny. Because what's in there, they're agreeing to pay, the staff's agreeing to pay the taxes for the private equity. They're agreeing that in the event that I am engaged in illegal activity, because you're an entity that has to be transparent, you are acknowledging and revoking your right for me to disclose that to you, which means you just signed a document that says, I could go break the law with your money, and you've agreed that it's fine. Then they agree to indemnify the person, like all the craziest crap you'd ever see. Like it just, that's all in the contracts, and then the fees, and the verbiage is so difficult to understand. It's so industry specific that the average attorney, and certainly the average staff investor guy, they would never understand it. Most private equity people, which by the way, it's difficult. It's easier to get into Harvard than it is to get a job with Blackstone, statistically. Most of those people reading those contracts would not understand them. These are very specific, industry specific things. And they're tools that, and if your fiduciaries of your board could read those, they wouldn't understand them. And so it's not about them reading it. It's about it being publicly available for everyone to read, so that a Ted Seidel, a real true pension expert, could go through all of them, inform the public this was what it means, get the media involved and all that, and shout that whole thing out. It would be gone. They would not ever get their money from public pensions anymore. And if they didn't, they're back into a reasonable box, okay? And that would mean they wouldn't need to put and have an interest to put quite as much in to protect all this stuff to their governor and attorney general, super PACs, and the unions, because this is why the unions are getting them. They're getting the money from them. And the big why is because everyone wants access to these funds. Why does that? Now, I want you to think about, well, wait a second. Okay, so my union has a super PAC. Why would a private equity be interested in putting that money into my union super PAC? What's the problem with that? All right. Well, the problem with that is the only people who have the power to really fight this and change things is your union. They're the ones. And they're neutered, completely neutered now. They're doing nothing. Nothing. Not just that. They are blocking the investigations, and we've got the documents proving it, where they were involved in emails and everything else, with the governor and everyone else. What are we going to do? We got to stop this investigation. We can't have it happen. They stop it every time. Now, not all of them. I mean, like I said, Rhode Island's union actually paid for it. But, unfortunately, a lot of these national unions absolutely stop it. They stop it. And so you have like the teachers in Minnesota, Democrat teachers, right? Liberal Democrat teachers, Minnesota. This one I filmed 2 blocks away from where George Floyd had his incidents. That's where she lives. And she's great. I mean, I get along with this gal so well. And she goes, I don't even know what I am anymore politically. I mean, they came out with this investigation, and when the report was ready, right then it was time to publish it. Their governor, what's his name? Mike Waltz, it becomes the vice president candidate with Harris for the Democrat ticket to run for president. And it's right when this investigation comes out. And so all these liberal Democrat teachers who were getting screwed, I mean, really screwed, what was happening to them, they're like, I don't know if we should release this report. This is going to be bad for our party. So they had to deal with that, and they had their own mini war back and forth. Should we do this? Should we not do this? And I was like, oh man, that is brilliant. That really worked out great. I couldn't have timed that better. And of course, the guy doing it, he actually wasn't a Trump supporter. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but Ted Siddell is definitely not a MAGA guy, for sure. And he didn't want to do anything bad, but it wasn't a political thing. He's like, this is information that has to come forward. Timing's timing, like whatever. And so how much of the media covered this report in the state of Minnesota? Nothing covered it. No one covered it. To this day, no one's covered it. There was like some small, they don't have much of a footprint, conservative people in that state. They got some little small independents here, but it wasn't been picked up by anyone else there. They got some national people covered it, but it wasn't that. So we're up against a real fight here. This is really, really difficult. And so this movie I'm making, what I've done is I've interviewed all these whistleblowers who have been working on these boards. I'm filming state senators, state treasurers, some media people, investigative journalists that have been kind of muzzled because their newspaper is owned also by private equity, right? I mean, if you follow what's going on, it's difficult. Where am I going to release this? I started thinking about that, man, all these platforms, if it goes here, they could pull they could pull it down. If I put it here, they could pull it. And I mean, I'm really thinking about doing a different kind of release than I've ever done because of that. It's difficult, right? It's really challenging. And you have it, but you're the closest to the source to make a change. And you are the most financially and physically interested in the problem, right? Your physical frame is destroyed with the hours they're having you work. That has to change uniformly across the country. Has to. Your retirement accounts they're lying to you about what's in there. They're saying, so let's say you're in, name a state, California, we're 80% funded or whatever, 70% funded. Chicago, you're screwed. But, and they could bankrupt on you. But if you're in California, they'll say, hey, we're 80% or 70% funded. That assumes that all this money they're putting in private equity, that the stated values are accurate. So every year, these public pensions are audited. And it's a legitimate audit. It really is. I mean, I'm not suggesting anything's wrong with the audit. when you read the fine print, or even right on the front page. And then what they are saying is, we are only looking at what we have access to. So they could see, hey, here's the S&P 500. You had 30% of the funds in S&P 500. Here's what you say it did. Here's what it did. Yeah, this is all accurate, right? But what they can't do is say, oh, you got this 40% right here, and it's in private equity. They're not allowed to see the contracts as the auditor. They're not allowed to go in and do any kind of true audit on those funds that BlackRock has and everybody else. I'm just naming as an example. I don't, on whoever it is, right? Apollo, whatever. They don't have the ability to go in and look at that. And so there's this thing called mark to market, and that doesn't exist in private equity funds. The fund manager gets to say what the value of his fund is worth. And everybody has to just go with that. So if the market were to suddenly drop 15%, everything drops 15%. Think about 2008. What happened in 2008, right? Huge crash. Real estate, huge crash. All assets, huge crash. Private equity, same. Okay, that's the story. And so when you're sitting there going, how come, like this CalPERS whistleblower said, we have these old dogs. We have investments that we've made in private equity that are on the books since the early 1990s, and they're unchanged. Clearly, those things didn't do anything. They're worthless, but they're not making it a change. There's an example of this. It's called Panda Power. Panda Power was some new energy kind of thing out of Texas, and the STRS Ohio Public Pension had invested $525 million in this Panda Power investment. One of their members went down to Houston and read in the Chronicle that company had just gone bankrupt. I mean, it was a stick in your fork kind of bankruptcy, right? Done. And so they went back and said, well, hey, that can't be good, right? So they went in and met with the fund manager, the staff at the Ohio State Teachers Retirement thing, and said, hey, we're looking through all this investment in Panda Power. What's the value of that listed there? We see it's listed as $525 million. What's the current value of it right now? Because we saw that it went bankrupt. And they said, well, it's zero. How come it says on here $525 million? Well, we talked about it, and it'd be a negative thing if we would have made a big deal about it, right? So they go, don't worry, we've already absorbed it. We've absorbed this. And the end result was they had the fund manager who was over it at the time, got his bonus, and then was promoted to the chief investment officer at that fund. So there's a lot of that going on. So anyway, you got any questions? This is I think I called you because I was like, I know why this is happening, why you're having so much resistance. I get why the unions are no longer working for you. They're working for their super PAC. They're working for someone else now. They got a lot of money there, and it's wrong. And but that's why. And as bad as it is for your work right now, your retirement's even worse unless you turn this around. And it all starts back there. That's where it starts.
Just to clarify, the unions in question, not the ones as you highlighted, the Rhode Island ones that are actually bucking the system and doing what's right for their men and women. What is happening behind closed doors that is causing this shift from fighting for their people to this self-interest that I keep seeing all the way through to the national level?
I imagine it's the private equity knocking on the door and seducing them, because that's what it's been When I interviewed state senators, treasurers, everybody else, I kind of understand how it happens. They come in and they're very good. I mean, they're getting the best of the best. They got the most money, and money is very difficult to turn down. So, you look a little bit, they might be helpful for a little bit, they would do this and this, but at some point it just ends up, there's a shift. You will know based on the responsiveness to your union whether they have a super PAC or not without even looking. Then you're going to look and you go, oh my gosh, there it is. Like it's all right there. It's not. It's what it is. So the thing is, they're only powerful because they got your money. They're literally, where's this book? They're stealing the money. I mean, but they're stealing it legally. They've been able to go in. Remember, this is different. It's okay. I did something else interesting, James. I asked ChatGPT, which I never do because ChatGPT, a search with ChatGPT takes 10 times more energy than a Google search. And that's another problem, right? But I said, how many bankruptcies happen in America? How much money is out there? It's like $3.5 million. How many is like 33? I can't remember what, 1,700 bank robbers. They collect like 3.3 million. It works out to be $3,300 a hit. That's it, 3,300 for a bank robbery. Bank robberies are so yesterday. Never rob a bank. Instead, get a job as a staffer for the investments portion of your public pension. That's where you're going to make money. You're really good. Either control the super PAC money, whoever they are, doing that for the unions or for the governors or whoever, or be one of the 4,000 plus private equity firms out there. There used to be 40 in the 80s. Now there's over 4,000. And it's really if you haven't been paying attention, how many public companies are going private. The private equity are buying them and bringing them private. And all their contracts, everything, they redact everything. The veil of secrecy that they get away with, and how they end up, they're so good at going into the states and everyone else, like they figured it out. They're just really great at it. And the people fighting it make $0. I mean, they make nothing. Your fiduciaries are making nothing to be on that board. And yet if they fight it, like in Ohio, the guy's fighting it, it's a $250,000 fight. With what money? They were like a teacher. How's that supposed to happen? And so it's a tough thing. And I don't know that that's the place to fight. I'm saying the real fight is your representatives. Like, that's it. Like right now, this is where it needs to be. I don't see how we can really move forward without unions. I think that we have to have unions now more than ever because of all this stuff that's happening. Back in the 80s, early 80s, the average CEO, I haven't fact checked this, but it was a pretty reliable source, I think. They were making, the average CEO was making 5 to 8 times pay of their average employee. Today, the average CEO makes 500 to 800 times their average employee. Mm-hmm. And so, you look at that and go, okay, I mean, come freaking on. How's this going to work? Most of the new gigs, most of the private equity, those are not union shops. It's not going that route. And it's not great paid. It's not a great deal. And everyone's getting cut. And with AI coming out and everything else, even the Screen Actors Guild, a 3 years ago hired Edward Siddell to represent them because of the future AI thing and all this crap that was happening. They had just cut the healthcare for all their seniors during COVID, right?
Jesus.
So I actually see the value of these unions. Like, I really see the value of the union. You need these unions to accomplish what you need. By yourselves, it's not enough. Like, you have to have all of that together. but they have to represent you. They just have to really represent you. And so the fight is on now. Like, that is it. It is. I'm just telling you, when you see the film, you will see. You will not be able to retire. Yeah, all those people who retired out of Detroit in 2010 by now are sitting at Walmart handing out shopping carts. They could not still be able to pay a bill. Not on 10 cents on the dollar, 25 cents on the dollar. Like, there's no way.
See, this is one thing I've said many, many times. I am a huge believer in the union philosophy, but I am also someone that just looks at actions. Like, I don't need to be too forensic in things. Like, are you doing what you're doing? Are you doing what you said you're going to do? And if, for example, you're a fire union and you are not even addressing something as basal as the standardized work week, especially if now your department where you're from works, in this case, a 24/72, and you're not even advocating for the rest of the country that are getting murdered, that I don't need to do anything other. I can see that you're not doing anything.
Is this Boston? Is this Boston doing
yes,
that?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
You know, and there was, again, great hope.
I'm not even a firefighter in the union, and I know that. Like, it's pretty obvious.
And before that was Fairfax, Virginia, who those poor people still work 56. So again, their supposed, union god, who became the national union guy, who was pilfering, by the way, he didn't even fix his own fire department. You know what I mean? So this is the thing. It's not about the union philosophy. It's the human beings that you put in these places. If they are not doing the thing, then they are not doing the thing. And like you said, if there's a reason, because their pockets are being lined, the same way as I'm rewatching Dopesick for the third time because I'm interviewing the real lawyer from that tomorrow. You know, you work for the FDA, you approve this drug, and now all of a sudden you're working for Purdue Pharma. Again, we don't need that. We already know what the fuck is going on. You know, that's clear. That's why they got that approval in the first place.
It's the same deal with the staff in private equity. It's that exactly. There's the hope, and they get like greased skids. There's ways to get money to these people. Yeah,
exactly. So I care about the men and women that are in the trenches, that are doing the work. And firstly, we need to get like I said, the work weeks, and because if you tell someone, oh, you've got 10 years and then you're going to be broke, a lot of these firefighters are going to, well, we die within 5 anyway, so it's not even an issue. That's so backwards the way that we should be thinking.
But it's backwards. You fix the money piece, then you actually are able to get your unions to give you your work piece.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. That's exactly it.
Can you see why this has been happening? I was like, oh man, I was just sitting in here editing away, and just all of a sudden I thought, James, this should probably tell James.
So to underline that again, because we have so many men and women who not only will, do 25, 30 years, but then we have what we call the drop program, where they'll stay for even more years because they'll basically, air quotes, double dip, thinking that this carrot on the stick is going to be the be all and end all. Then they move to our state and they're going to play, golf for decades after that. And the reality from the health point is more often than not, they're not going to have a long and healthy retirement because they worked themselves into the ground. But let's just underline again, this pension that these first responders and these other, employees in cities and states and counties and federal, that one thing that keeps them going, so they're going to retire and play with their grandkids for several decades. If everything stays as it is, what is the reality of those pensions?
If everything stays what it is, those pensions aren't going to grow enough because they're being pilfered. So much of the funds are going into private equity, which is locked away for an undisclosed, who knows how long period of time. And they're not getting the returns that they're saying they're getting. They're lying. And the other part of that is it's impossible to make up for an underfunded pension by getting better returns. So you would have to, if you go 1 year, now this is scary, but if you go 1 year as a pension and you pay out just 1% too much, right? 1% differential between collecting and paying out. 1%, 1 year. It takes 7 years of over market returns to make up for it. It takes 7 years to make up for it. I guarantee you, almost everybody that I'm talking to, that last 5 out of 8 years, they've done that. It would take 40 years, and they're never going to get all 40. They may be lucky if they get 5 of them that they outperform. So it's impossible. So there's a legislative requirement that they actually place more dollars from the state into the public pension fund. Has to happen. Okay, cities have to do it. Counties have to do it. States have to do it. Federal government has to do it for all it has to. There's no other way for that to be fixed. The other thing is you have to stop the leakage, and that's coming from private equity. And what's going on is investigations, and the big stink is being blocked by the unions. So the very people who the unions are supposed to represent, the people, your firefighter, right? Or police or whoever's listening. Too many of these unions are stopping any discussion here, stopping the investigation. So they say they do this and that, but they're not. And because of that, if you're a firefighter, for example, and you're like, I've got to get some relief. My body is being destroyed. I've got to get one more day off. That will change everything, right? Your union's not doing it because the union's getting, greased from private equity funds into their super PACs. And so that's why it's happening. And the only way that this is going to stop, and so they're not going to listen to you about your physical needs until you fix the money problem. You've got to take over that, take it back, take the union back and say, no, you have to represent me, not them anymore. Stop participating in the super PACs. Just stop. You don't do politics ever again. We're done taking money from private equity. Why are you taking money from them? Why? Like you could see the behavior. It's so clear. They're bought. So the moment they stop, say no, now they're going to be interested in helping your retirement. And now they're going to go expose all that crap. And then their pressure, oh man, everything goes because you're a voting bloc and everything else. Now this governor's going to have to decide. Yeah, but once that pressure gets to that point, they're like, okay, we're going to go transparent. Once they go transparent, private equity's gone and the whole thing's unwound. Does that make sense? And so then your union's able to help you, what you want. You're going to have a retirement. They'll be able to put the pressure on. The state will put the money in because, they got to have firefighters. They got to have police officers. They're going to put the money in, fully fund you guys back up. Now they could just put the money in basic bonds that are inflation protected, that just grows like it should. Nothing crazy is going on like it used to be when everything was fine in the 90s and early 90s and 50 years leading up to the early 90s. Everything was fine, right? This is a new problem, and it's no mystery why it's happening.
You see the same behavior in so many areas. You talk to a lot of the veterans or people that are just kind of, well educated in the economy world, and you talk to them about war. And, where are the checks and balances when there's so many people that pay politicians billions of dollars, literally, where are the checks and balances to stop sending our men and women to war, our children overseas, when you are going to profit from it? Where are the checks and balances when you make so much money from fast food companies and tobacco companies and, pharmaceutical companies and health insurance companies when people are fat and sick? Where's the checks and balance to stop that? And this is the same human issue that we see here. I'll give you a perfect example. The Florida Fire Chiefs Association, but I did a presentation, did like a Q&A panel on the 2472 after Governor DeSantis signed in a bill saying they recommended a 42-hour work week in the fire service here. Danny Alvarez put forward. They actually put an email amongst themselves saying that we oppose the 42-hour work week. Now, to be clear, these are people that go home at 5 o'clock every night, Monday to Friday, work 40 hours, And they are saying that our firefighters don't deserve to work less than 56 and basically deal with the recruitment crisis that they created that's now causing mandatory overtime, so 80 plus hour work weeks. So, until you pull that out into the spotlight and say, there are zero fucking ethics going on here whatsoever, and it's not about helping other people. You are just helping yourself at the expense of other people, whether it's the nation's health or the provocation of war constantly, or the health and well-being of our first responders. Then I agree with you 100%. It should be literally torches and pitchforks figuring out who's been fucking you over, and then find the good people, because they are. Dixon Phillips, Pasco County, I'll give you a perfect example. That's the kind of person that you want at the head of your union. So there are some phenomenal people out there, but if it is rotten, you have to clean house. It's as simple as that.
So one thing I just want to make a point of, you just talked about money. You're trying to stop the wars, stop the excessive things happening, the crap that's happening in the healthcare and everything else, right? You mentioned those issues. I just want to say, where do you think that money's coming from?
Same.
And the answer is from your retirement account at your public pension. Those private equity dollars, that power they've got, it's not like it's really theirs. They're using your money to do it. It's your money. Like all you have to do is stop them using your money, and almost all of the things that we're so frustrated with private equity buying out everybody's houses, buying out all these manufactured homes, and raising the lot fees, and because they're stuck. I mean, this happened here in Florida. There's a guy who does plumbing on my house. He only charges like $30 an hour. He's old. He's great, and lives in a manufactured home. And his lot rate went from 200 to 880 in a month. And he's like, well, I can't pay that. But to move his thing to somewhere else costs 20 grand. So he doesn't have that. So what's he going to do? Well, he keeps paying it until he can't pay it anymore, and he BK's out. He's done. And that's going on all across America. Retirement centers, the kind that have to get a little bit of help. They have to. That group has been bought out by private equity as well, and you see a 12% increase in deaths when private equity buys out a retirement center. They're buying out all the for-profit hospitals right now. They're anticipating a 10% increase in deaths in emergency rooms. Okay, so that's what's happening, and they're doing it with your retirement money, right? Your money, and most people, most of their public pensions, they're taking some of your paycheck and they're putting it into these accounts. It's not like the state's paying all this stuff. In most cases, the people are paying more than the state is. So that, yeah. All right, well, that's in a nutshell. Man, this is hour 12. That's exactly the length I'm hoping for this movie. So there we go. You watch the whole movie.
Brilliant. It's funny you say about the retirement homes, because Rick, who's coming on tomorrow, the real lawyer from the Purdue Pharma case, he now is spearheading a case exactly what you're talking about, the nursing homes. And they got a documentary called No Place for Old People. No Country for Old People, kind of spin on the other film. Yeah. But it's blowing that open. And a lot of us listening, we know we've been in these horrendous nursing homes, and it's not that there are evil nurses, lurking around everywhere. It's usually woeful understaffing, poor conditions, just cramming these patients in. The isolation they experienced during COVID was horrendous. And again, the nefarious nature behind it, that these people are literally, as they call them, human warehouses. They're just shelving these humans and taking the money. And so it seems like blowing open this issue, there's so many areas that we could improve if we take the power away from exactly what you're talking. But the reason why there's skin in the game in this conversation is it's literally going to affect every first responder that believes that this golden egg, this nest egg that they're building through 20 plus years, they're going to be able to live on for another 20, 30 years.
One part of that conversation I'm not going to have tomorrow, but I will tell you what's going on, is when that private equity firm got the money to buy those, First, they went to your public pension staff and sat down and did a presentation and said, look, we're going to buy these retirement centers and we're going to be able to run them differently to extract higher profit margins. And it's going to mean 15% return for your public pension. And all they saw was 15%. Ethics is gone. Moral consequence is over. Whether you're talking about the California public pension funds, it doesn't matter the state. Nobody cares. They just want this high return. And so I'm just telling you, all the bad that's happening is happening with our public dollars, with the public pensions. And it's pretty interesting. that's the why, though. This is the why. This is how it's happening and how you close it up. And it's really a function of taking back control of your unions and say, no more of that. We're done.
It's sad. It's very timely as well, because two companies that I had a great relationship with a few years, I've watched that same issue happen to them, where they've come in, they've, gutted them from the inside. And again, they were successful because they were doing it right and they had great people and they created great products. And it's heartbreaking. Like I've spoken to so many people that, they poured their heart and soul into these companies. And now, they're basically, all but looking for somewhere else to work in different cases. So you're also destroying American industry.
I mean, we've known this since 1990. It was so common that they even put it in Pretty Woman. This is how private equity does it, right? It's exactly what they do. No one's arguing about them not making money. They themselves always make money. They do great. The public pensions are the third tier. Nobody cares about them. They're considered the dumb money. They're not necessarily making money. But they need it. They need it. And the whole 401k that everyone's getting excited about, putting money in public pensions, in private equity. Trump's been, making a big deal about that. Open up 10% of your 401k to put it there, so that you can get these high returns, not just this institutional money, but now the common guy could. They're a big example as well. All these pensions, like private equity, like public pensions, like CalPERS are doing it. Yeah. They are. They're not getting their return. They're being lied to. And there's no way you'll ever be able to read a contract yourself. You have no idea what's going on. So, and you're locked away for a very, very, very long time. A very long time. So yeah, lots of things that are interesting. And there's a role for private equity, and there are good private equity plays that actually are interested in growing the economy and everything else. But then there's the evil stuff. And it's the other side, just like everything, look at this is life. This is nature. This is everything. You've got a positive and negative on everything, right? You just do. And so it's the negative side that's taken over, like an invasive weed. It's just taken over everywhere. And we just need to kind of get it back under control, more in a box, more contained. Let them get money from, just normal money like everyone else has to get. And don't just open up all the public pensions. And because with that comes no more representation by your union, no more representation by your state elected officials. Why would they listen to you and the little paltry sums of money that you give them when they're going to get 3 or 6 zeros on the end of it that's just how it works. And so it even makes it so that you can't be a candidate and run for public office effectively. Like why doesn't the Senate, why doesn't the Congress change this? Because all of them have super PACs. Like there's no way you can get a quorum to do that. The only thing we can do is to stop our public monies going into them. And that's it. So I'm doing the expose, and I'm going to probably stay in this space and document all the efforts. So if you guys start making a major effort in one of your states, I want to hear from you. I want to come out and film you guys making this effort and document for other people to see and model. I'm going to have some kind of internal place and just show like series and episodes of all real, not on YouTube because they'll pull it down. I mean, it's just on my own. I'll figure it out. I'm thinking about charging everybody $1, something like that, So I got a plan. A cheap plan for everybody, but I think that's the way it'll go. So If you want to find out more about this film or find out when it comes out, please go to conmovies.com. So it's CON movies, plural, conmovies.com. And the first thing listed is a subscribe thing. Just subscribe. And then I will send you information as this thing comes out. And that'll be like step one for a lot of people.
I want to get to, really highlighting the solution. But just before we do, you kind of alluded to, we don't know what's being done with that money. And I can think of some current state of affairs where funding certain conflicts overseas, I would be disgusted if my pension money was being used for that. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
About what it's being used for or where that's going?
Either or.
Or how? Okay, so you could look up your public pension fund and you could see which funds they're in. And then you have to do an investigation on the funds and see where that money's kind of gone. But you end up kind of lost at some point, all right? There are some things that have come out for one reason or another that we do know about. I told you about something environmentally that was kind of crazy. I mean, should I share that story?
Yeah, please. Yeah, especially for people in this state, they're going to be disgusted.
I don't know how much I want to share about it yet. But all of us are familiar with Apple saying we're going to be carbon neutral by the year 2030. If you saw their big release 2 years ago, one of their iPhone, whatever number it was, it showed Mother Nature, some famous actor who I don't remember her name, but she's coming in acting like Mother Nature, and Apple did their own, played themselves and a bunch of things sitting around Mother Nature, and then they were saying, but we're being good. We're going to be carbon neutral by 2030, and it was so lame. And they were just talking about all the things they're doing environmentally, and it was a big accolade thing. And I was impressed. I was like, wow. I mean, I got it. I'm talking on a Mac right here. They get a lot of money from me, and so what if that's not true? What if none of it's true? They may not even know it's true. And I work with people, and I'm doing another project, they're not environmentalists because they say the term is actually bought out by corporations now, and that the environmental movement's not environmental movement. It's not conservation. It's nothing. And I'm actually to the point I'm agreeing with them now because of what I've seen. So I decided to actually follow the whole life cycle of this carbon exchange program, right? I'm Apple. I've got to make keyboards. I've got to make data centers. I've got to make all this stuff. And clearly this is not saving the economy, right? So how do I do this? I'm going to put some money into this exchange. And there's this exchange, someone runs with it. That's what you want to own, these exchanges. You want to own the super PAC. Whoever gets to own those, there's got to be money there. So the money's going to come in. A little bit comes out for the exchange. And I think Gore owns one of those. And then it goes over to a company that's planting trees, right? So I went to one of these companies that are planting trees. Here's what's interesting. First, someone let me in, and I went and filmed it. We have pine forests. They go from Florida to North Carolina. Most of them, the vast majority of them, are actually privately owned, and they are GMO pine trees now. They've gone into a full forest and they've raised it to the ground, right? They cut it all down, and then they build up little mounds like you do when you plant corn, in nice rows, mound it up. They have machines to do this, and then they drop these pine trees really close together, and they're GMO trees, so they don't drop pine cones because they don't want to mess with they don't want a pine tree growing anywhere but the spot where they're going to be able to easily harvest that, right? That's all they're going to do. But what else do they want? Well, they don't want a bunch of other things growing in a forest that grows in a forest that makes up an ecosystem. So they crop dust, they spray, and they spray regularly. So I went in and filmed, and from 12 feet down, it was dead. Everything's dead. The trees are alive because they're GMO trees. They're not killed by the pesticide. the herbicide. But they spray the pesticide, the herbicide, just like they do in corn, GMO cornfields. It does it everywhere. And so where does this runoff go? It goes straight into the culverts. It goes right down the rivers, and it's going right out into the little bays and the estuaries and everything in Florida. And then you probably seen we're having a problem with flesh-eating bacteria. That's really on the rise.
Yep.
Seems to be kind of correlated to what they've been up to. They're killing everything. This is also endocrine disrupting chemicals, so that screws up the whole downline cycle. We have seen such a cut on bugs and birds and everything else worldwide. So this is what's happening. That's here. What's happening up in British Columbia? British Columbia, Canada. That's like an environmental place, right? Come on, this is the tree hugging. They're like more liberal than California, right? We're Canadians, right? Okay. Canada, British Columbia has been cutting down virgin, over 1,000-year-old forests at a pace on average, the last 5 years, three football fields worth a day for the past 5 years. So you cut down, and in one of these forests, I'm working with his natives and the university that works with this native tribe. This native tribe right now is being sued by the British Columbia government, for blocking their tribal land from this logging company to cut down 1,000-plus-year-old trees, right? That they've protected in millennium. It's theirs. And so they're out there arm in arm, and people are trying to come and join them. I was thinking about flying up there and filming this thing in the middle of this pension movie. And so they had an expert from university come sit down in an area and just start cataloging the bugs he's finding. And he identified 200 brand new bugs that's never been identified ever. Now, I don't know how many bugs you know. I'm from California. I will tell you, if I went and interviewed the average California kid, they would be lucky if they could come up with 10 bugs that they even know about. They got the roly-poly, the earwig, there's a few, a spider or whatever, like 10 max. This guy finds 200 new ones in addition to everything else they already know about. So what we're talking about is this rich, insanely diverse ecosystem. And if you don't understand why that's valuable, for one, think about everything it's doing to purify our air, all of that together. And what a 1,000-year-old tree, the size and everything living in it does. And then you cut it down, this entire forest, and then you get paid from the carbon exchange to put a tree this big in the ground, which you plan to cut down in 20 to 40 years. Same thing over here. You couldn't, in theory, accept, if you're Apple, a carbon exchange program, right? You couldn't accept that if the tree's going to be cut down. It's like you plant it in, and there it is, right? You'd have to never cut it down. But everything's being cut down. Everything they're canning, they're putting in the ground, and they're going to cut it down. That's what they do. Yeah. So it's a really wicked system. I know that's not the question you were asking, but I had to share that. And yeah, it's all private equity behind that. Of course it is. And it's a good business model. And they're destroying everything. And so as they do that, that affects our hormones, right? What they're spraying it with, endocrine disrupting chemicals. So everybody who thinks they have to be on TRT, HRT, and all the crap that's happening to us, very real stuff happening by everything you eat and everything. It's everywhere. So that means you're way more likely to get heart disease and name it, right? Because of you're not balanced. And that means you're going to be part of the health system, which just so happens all these for-profit hospitals now are being bought out by private equity, right?
It's a common theme here.
You're eventually going to be in a retirement home earlier than later. You're not going to be able to age in place. And that's going to be owned by private equity, right? So you start to see how this really starts to play out. And so, yeah, these chemical companies are owned by private equity. Yeah, it's a full life cycle. we go in, and I've always saw it happening when I do health films and stuff. You see the life cycle between the chemical company, and you see the pharmaceutical company, and you see the hospital, the surgery, and the government. You see this beautiful system there. What I never really got is, where's that money really coming from in the first place? And now I got the piece. Oh, it's this. It's where all the money is. It's our pensions.
It's our money.
But there is the thing that nobody said. I interviewed everyone in this film. I go, what is the go-to? Like, what is it that you want? What do we need to do? Man, no one had it. And I'm like, no, this is easy. You have to stop them getting your money. The moment that stops, it all unwinds everywhere. Suddenly, you're not going to see as many wars. There's not the money there. I'm just telling you, it all backs out. It all comes in, and it's coming from your public pensions. That's the big pile of money.
So for people listening, let's say you've got firefighters in the station, you've got, the teacher who's driving home, all the people that we're trying to educate on this specific topic. What can they do today to start the process of revealing if this is even an issue in their city, county, state, and then beginning the steps to actually undoing the damage?
It's an issue. It's an issue. It's an issue. If you don't believe it's an issue, go look at your websites. There's all this information, and then go in and go to your local board, next pension board meeting, and ask to see one of the documents, and ask and interview any of the fiduciaries there, and say, have you seen any of these documents that they've signed? And you'll see real fast, like, no one saw them, and they'll look at you like, what are you doing here? It's a pretty complex thing. I'm hoping that you watch the film that I'm going to try to release really, really soon. And then there'll be a bit better action plan. But for the people you just outlined, every single one of them have a union, right? And you need to get control of that again. If not, then you need to do what a lot of the people do in my film, and they've created new Facebook groups. They get the other teachers involved, or the other firefighter, or whatever they are, police, and they start there, and get organized that way. If you're union, I don't even know what the rules are on this. Do you know the rules on this, James? Can all the firefighters in an area decide we do want to be unionized, but our union's not serving our needs? We're going to just have another union going. We'll sign up with another one to represent us. Is that possible?
I'm not sure. I mean, you're asking a person who's happy to burn something to the ground if it needs to be. But I would imagine that the next click down would just be a complete vote of no confidence. If your union is discovered to have done this at whatever level, then it's a case of just Control Alt Delete and getting new people in and making sure that they are holding the state union, the national union accountable. And if that's not happening, then maybe you need to come up with something different. But like I said, I'm a huge believer in the union philosophy. So I guess every example is going to be different, but it's certainly first, are the people that are in those positions serving you? It is that simple is the first question. Is your president? I mean, you think about what we've just talked about. None of it has been all the Republicans or all the Democrats. It's, I was thinking the analogy this morning, it's like a pendulum, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. But we forget, well, where's the hinge of that pendulum? It's exactly what we're talking about. It's the people with the money at the top. So, right. If your political party, if your union, whoever is, the next step above you is not serving you, I would say, well, there's your first step. And then if, the union that you're a part of just seems completely corrupt, then maybe, New York has their own union, for example. But the structure is there. I think it's the accountability that we need to do. I think that everything can exist within the structure they've already created, but are the right people in those positions. And as you alluded to in Rhode Island, I have in Pasco County, go look at the unions that are doing it right. How did they get the right people? How are they having good relationships with their city or their county? And then start modeling that, and then the rising tide lifts all ships and flushes the turds out the toilet.
Yeah. My objective in coming to you was one, just to kind of I'll suddenly wake everybody up. Here's what's happening, and here's what we have to change, and how we have to change it. And then my intention is, I'm not really viewing me as anyone's leader to make that change. I'm documenting what's happening, but I think what I'm planning on doing is not leaving this and documenting everybody's successful efforts and what they're doing. I'll tell you, the group that went the furthest from total corruption to the right in the middle of it is Ohio. They sued for 5 years and won in the low court, one on appeal, and then one in the state Supreme Court, the right to receive the documents. Ted Seidel, 5 years. So they paid for it. They got the whole thing done. The pension, and ultimately because they lost, the pension lost, had to pay all that. But 30% of the funds documents when they came in were 100% redacted, even though the Supreme Court said they had to give it.
It's insane.
30% were partially redacted. Okay, partially redacted, and then 30%. It's 33, whatever. 33 were actually showed what's going on. So Ted Seidel has information that no one's been able to have to date, but he says, to be truthful, it's all the same. It's all the same stuff. They're using like the same document. They have the same instruments in them. You're seeing these things the way it works, and but I'm just saying, going through legal and with as best you can get and winning at the state Supreme Court, there's still a third of them. It was just every line was black, and a third of them, all the good stuff was black, right? And then only a third got actually disclosed. Like, I don't care. They're probably like the newer small funds, and they don't even understand what their industry is yet. They're still learning. So, so that's where you're at there. And then I've interviewed like state senators, Democrat and Republican state senators. So you're on the state Senate. You would think, and you're on the board, you would think you're somebody, you're in a position to do something. Oh my gosh, they are so frustrated. They are so frustrated. And the Attorney General, they always say to be one step ahead. And so I don't honestly see anything changing unless you guys succeed with your union. That's where we're at. I just don't. Because ultimately, it's your money. You're the people. It's you guys. And if you have an underfunded pension, the only way you're going to get funded again is the state has to put in enough money so that it's funded. It will never get funded because of great returns from private equity. And that's the sorry sales pitch that's been going on since 2013, 2012 in mass numbers. And also, like in Ohio, what they did is the teachers went from, this is a state that doesn't have Social Security. They went from putting in 10% of their money each year, each month or whatever it is, 10%, to 14%. The state kept doing 14%. It's a no income tax state. On average, if you're no income tax state, the state would put in 30%, but they've only been putting 14%. They didn't put a dime more in for these poor teachers. So the teachers had to go from 10% to 14%, and the teachers lost their COLA, which gets us back to the very beginning of our talk about someone living in a chicken coop. Mm-hmm. That's not even going to be in the movie. It should be. I should go find that person. But so you can see why I'm kind of coming to this, and all the people I've done this film with, and part of it, like all these really smart people. Nobody's doing the conversation we're doing here, James. Because I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is the only way this is going to change. And you guys lost your union. That's what's happened. I mean, it never would have happened. If you think about it, the power of a union, like no one wants to mess with that, right? Yeah, I mean, come on, you have the President of the United States out there campaigning, picketing, in Detroit, right? I mean, and what was that about, by the way? They wanted a 25%, increase because they had a 30% increase or whatever. They hadn't had an increase forever. But it was really about their pension. That's really what that was about. That's where the fights are. And all they will tell you, oh, it's all good here. I know what you've been told over here. It's great here. And and if you ever decide to hire anyone, a group to represent you, Ted Siddell, like he's a dirt cheap guy. He's got so many millions, and he likes to do these things for people. So anyway, that's the gist of it. But I would love to hear from anyone who actually decides to fight this, do their thing, wants it documented. I want to track that, and I want to show everybody to learn how to do this. There is no template that where we're at. There was no template for how we got here. This is the most organized, amazing theft in the history of ever. The history of ever, right? And to the point that they own so many of the houses, just everything. All the businesses. We haven't even talked about how they're buying up all the small businesses and HVACs. You're calling up an HVAC. You know, I got my AC's acting up, needs to be repaired. What's it cost? And everybody seems to be in the same price, and they're all owned by private equity firms. Everyone now. So that's what's going on. And so everything we hate about what's going on right now, again, I just want to emphasize it's happening with the money that's coming from your pension. All right.
Well, the whole point of this show, as I've said many times, is to get people educated and angry. And then angry, not like, burning down cities and things, but only when you understand do you have the kind of realization like, oh, this is something I got to fight for. I got to fight to go home to my family when I'm supposed to. I got to fight for a healthier work week. I got to fight to be one of the voices that stops a war that ends up getting my child sent overseas for no reason. These are all things that we have to understand as a nation, as a planet. And I think this has been incredible. I mean, when you called me, a few days ago and we had this conversation for the first time, my mind was blown. And ironically, I don't even have a pension. I cashed mine out to do the podcast, to be this voice. But, I'm advocating for so many other people. And, there are so many solutions to so many people's problems if we just are proactive with the thing. Like I've had a conversation with several healthcare professionals recently. 20% of our GDP is spent on healthcare. And again, which I'm sure most goes into private equity, as we were just talking about. But so we don't need more money. We need healthier people. We need to, change this kind of pendulum from completely reactive back to proactive, and uncovering things exactly like you're talking about to protect our pension and then also take power away from these predatory actions. I mean, it's everything. So I want to thank you so much. Just before I let you go, let's just underline again where people kind of can find the film and roughly when are you looking to release it?
Well, I'm aiming to have the film done by the end of the year. Usually that means the film wouldn't show up anywhere for 4 to 6 months. If I'm able to do a different kind of release, it might come out right away. Like it might be out as soon as late January, early February. So however it happens, I will notify anybody who goes to conmovies.com and just put your email address in there. And I ask anyone who have ever had their email address. I pretty much never send out emails. I will just notify you. Here it is. Here's what's going on. And I never share information with anybody. You will never get an advertisement, nothing like that. I'm not affiliated with anybody. Oh, by the way, I self-funded this whole entire movie. My dad draws CalPERS money. And so I use proceeds from previous funds to fund this one. And I am really proud of being able to participate and do this one. Like this has been so unifying for me because I've been able to work with the extremes of both parties as well as the people in the middle, like everybody. And on this issue, everybody is united. Like I will tell you, Republicans and Democrats who are not receiving this crazy, super PAC money, everyone's eye to eye on it. And the unions, I saw the value of unions for the first time in my life. I have never been involved in a union at any kind. It's not completely true. Actually, back when I was 16 years old, I worked for Bel Air grocery store on Florin Boulevard in Sacramento, California. And it was a union grocery store, and I made $5.50 an hour. And fast forward to 2018, so that was 1985. Okay, 2018, we moved to Florida from California. My daughter, special needs daughter, gets a job working for Publix grocery store, bag girl. I was a bag boy, like same thing, right? And she made $7 and I think $7.70 an hour. So $2 more from 1985 to 2018. I'll tell you, $5.50 an hour was a good wage back in 1985. It's good money. I was able to save. For college, working at a grocery store, and that and the paper. Like I could do it. My daughter has to live with me. Like there's no hope, right? I mean now it's paying like 14 because of monster inflation we've had. But so I do see the value of unions and representing people, and I also feel like whether I or anyone agrees with, because there's a lot of pension envy. Only 10% of America has pensions, public pensions, right? There's a lot of pension envy. A lot of people are sitting there, I don't have any retirement saved. Why should my tax dollars go and bail those people out, right? There's all of that talk going on, right? Well, I tell people why in the film. Because we wrote a contract stating, here's what you get, and you get an inflation-protected pension for life. That's why you took the job. That was a big part of why you took the job, right? You got paid less now for more later. We're going to take care of you. And since the Magna Carta to present day, what we write down matters. And suddenly, our states are saying, actually, those are weaker contracts. We're able to finagle and get out of that. I'm like, what does that even mean? That's the essence of who we are. So it's immoral to take someone who schooled our kids or ourselves and let them live in a chicken coop. Like that's immoral. I don't know. We go back to the Bible. We go to the Bible, Micah, and said, woe to them who join house to house, Isaiah. It's Isaiah chapter 1, I believe. Woe to them who join house to house, whatever, until there's no more inheritance, right? And you rob the widows, you rob the orphans. This is exactly what we are doing right now in America to the level we've never seen it before. Used to be, here's some land, go take care of it, whatever. Of course, we were taken away from my other line of my ancestry, the native side. But anyway, there it was, right? So it's immoral. And so we need unions. We need them. We don't need what's happening right now with too many of them. We need real representation for people. And we're going to the age of AI and all that crap that's happening. And all these companies are like everybody's going to need to end up joining up with one. We need way more union representation. This is kind of needed, unfortunately. It's needed. For those who don't like it, it's needed. And for the states that don't want to help their people out, we have to. So that means all the citizens are going to have to pony up. We're just have to do it. It's going to be painful. And, but who are we for you are stealing from someone. You literally stole their life. You stole 40 years of their life that they worked saying, I'm going to get paid this, and then you don't give it to them. Like what? That's just, it's theft. So pension promises stolen. The cost of secrecy. That's the working title for the film. So go to commovies.com, give me your email, and whenever it's out, you'll suddenly get an email from me. And there probably won't be another one.
Well, Doug, I want to thank you. Firstly, I'm excited to see the film. I think it's so needed.
By the way, it's not even on a timeline right now. It's just like, it's nothing. It's just recording. I've just gone through the footage the first time. So yeah, I'm excited to see it too. It'll be great.
It will. But the way you told the story, like I said, going back to the motivation factor, that's such a powerful medium. And I love the fact that documentaries are really, successful now because they're so educational, as long as you're not watching one with the complete bias.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's really going to open a lot of people's minds. And then, obviously when we're this level, then maybe we can look even higher up at, the last few presidents and, what happens when people line their pockets and, the country pays for that too. So, just pulling the curtain back on all these issues, I think is so important to empower us Americans, we the people, I think it was written somewhere. So with that being said, I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time again and coming back onto the Behind the Shield podcast.
All right. Thanks so much, James.